السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة. I was planning today to discuss a subject that I thought is relevant to the events of the last many years, which is the ever-changing Middle East. The ever-changing Middle East. And this was before the US bombing of nuclear sites in Iran. So inshallah, we'll try to alter the program a little. We'll still discuss the ever-changing Middle East, but we're gonna start with a perspective from our guest, Dr. Khudr Zarour, who's a faculty staff at NC State in the Political Science Department. And as you can guess, he's busy these days. Too many interviews from overseas TV stations to locals on the events that took place and it's taken place in the Middle East. So we're gonna start with him, inshallah, getting a perspective on the bombing of Iran by the US and some background, its implication, and inshallah after that we'll give within this same topic the perspective of that this is part of the trend of the Middle East in turmoil, and why this is the case, and the role of the Zionist entity in Palestine transferring from being an entity that was looking for a place in the Middle East to gather the Jews who had been kicked out of Europe because they did have a Jewish problem, to the point where now they want to dominate the whole area, and they do not want any country, neither Arab nor Muslim, to have a say or dominance on the future of the Middle East unless it's approved by this Zionist entity and their supporters. But that's a subject, inshallah, we'll connect it. But I know the bulk of you have many questions on this issue, so hopefully Dr. Khadr can address them, and inshallah we'll leave some time today more than usual for questions and comments. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for attending. It's Sunday night. You could be watching basketball, but you're here. Anyways, thank you, Dr. Hisham, for the invite. Glad to be here. I get the same question asked by friends, faculty members, students, colleagues. The question is always revolve around one question, and that question is, when does the Middle East ever become stable? And the answer really is, every time you have one empire ruling the entire Middle East, you have stability. The Hellenistic age, 2400 BC or so, it was stable. The Hellenists ruled, the Persian ruled, the Phoenicians somehow built colonies throughout. Of course, the Byzantine Empire, the Roman Empire. That was stability. Is it perfect? No. Is it democratic? Not really, but it was stable. That's the whole point. Is it stable? Is it continuous stability? Then, of course, the Muslim Arab, they call them conquerors, they brought stability for 200 or 300 years with the Umayyad dynasty, and they built another empire in Spain. They built kind of another empire in India and the Caucasus and Central Asia. So anytime you have an empire that basically provides laws, law and order, stability, security, then you're going to have one unified polity, one unified political system where everyone is ensured the right to worship, the right to travel, the right to education. What we have seen since the First World War, the end of the First World War, 1917, 1918, when 1917, when Jerusalem fell, And of course, the British general said, well, this is the end of the Crusades. Well, this doesn't sit very well with many of us who come from the region because they still operate under the mentality of conquering. And that's what we find. And that's really offensive to say, well, this is the end of the Crusades. Well, maybe they haven't ended because the Second World War was the North African Arab Muslims that really helped the French defeat the Germans. It was not the French themselves because the French left France and went to England to run France from England, called Vichy France, or collaborators with the German Nazis at the time. And the United States came by accident, not design, to control the Middle East. They don't have a clear strategy. They don't have a policy. I called it in my last article that I published last year called Meddling Through. Meddling through, oh, we just fix things as they emerge. No strategy, miscalculation. They don't understand the intricate movements, the intricate moving parts that's going on in the region. Is it oil? Is it security for Israel? Is it security for international trade through the Strait of Hormuz or Bandar Abbas, whatever? Is it really those are the policies or the strategies? We don't really have a strategy. And what I like to, before I stop talking, because I like to really hear what you have to say. The United States is like the Romans, and the British are the Greeks. The Greeks are the thinkers, and the Romans were the doers. And in this case, it's the British that are the thinkers, and the Americans are the doers. So they're behind the doors. The British are pushing things around, and the US just comes in and mop things up, clean things up for us. We are reaching a point where we don't really have a stable entity in the entire Middle East. Not one country that's stable. Even those that are stable, they're not really stable, like Jordan, not really stable. Okay, one phone call, things could be in shambles. Egypt, definitely not stable. Again, we know the reasons why, but I don't know how much time do I have before I... 30 minutes, okay. So a couple of things I like to talk about. One is miscalculations. And of course, the United States, global powers, have a miscalculation. We have this competition that's emerging in the Arabian Gulf. Sometimes people call it the Persian Gulf. So I'm focusing on the Arabian Gulf for now. And that is the strategy the Chinese want to control the region economically. And they do have, I think, signed deal with Saudi Arabia and Iran. They want to have access to oil for 50 years. Now, the Chinese only interest is really access to the Middle East, the markets, because big spenders in the Persian Gulf or Arabian Gulf. And they want to control that channel of trade going from the South China Sea, and that's where the United States have the Fifth Fleet. And that's why Taiwan is becoming a contentious issue, and it could lead, hopefully not, into major war. It could happen. It depends what Russia does in Ukraine. If they win the war, then China will become more empowered. And if Russia loses the war, then of course the United States will be more empowered. So this is kind of the balancing act that major powers have to always be conscious of, have to be very cautious when they talk politics. China walks, as they say, Chinese proverb is, speak softly, but carry a big stick. And China is carrying a huge stick. Their military revenue has jumped from, I think, 120 million to billion to about $400 billion. So you could see the trajectory. The problem is what we have now. The United States has reached its summit, which is the highest level of power economically, socially, militarily, and it's not climbing anymore. It has reached the maximum point, whereas China is continuing to climb. And China is building allies in the entire region, Africa, Central Asia. They're expanding. They have kind of this game where you conquer by peaceful means or diplomatic means. And the United States uses the only tool that they think is appropriate, that is force. Force, you could use it 1, 2 times, 3 times, then what happens? It's miscalculation, and you lose a lot of treasure, blood, sweat, tears. You have to bury people. Vietnam, we spent, I don't know how many billions of dollars. We show nothing. And still, Vietnam became communist. That's lost territory. North Korea, stands still, billions of dollars we spend. 50, 60, 70 years of occupation of South Korea. There's nothing to show for. So that is kind of the miscalculation I'm talking about. And the Middle East is no small feat that we're talking about here, simply because the Middle East is huge. It is very diverse. It's obvious what the United States should do, but why can't the United States reach that point where we could reach peace? We have the upper hand. The question is, can the United States maintain this upper hand? Not anymore, because as we've seen, the region has fragmented. Sudan, Yemen, I could list countries all day long. That's the miscalculation because there is no strategy. And in democratic systems, the chaotic system, sometimes it's called, because when you change leadership in Washington or England, well, that policy or negotiated deal you signed a year ago is no longer valid, okay? And I don't know if you noticed, but presidents like to reach executive orders. What's the difference between executive orders and an agreement? The difference is when you sign an agreement by Congress, it's an agreement between two states. So if you change leadership in the White House, that agreement is still valid. Executive order, on the other hand, when the president leaves, that's no longer valid. The next president could practice that or maintain it or not. We have seen 2015, the nuclear deal between Iran and the United States plus European powers and China and Russia. Well, when Mr. Trump came to power, said, no, that's no longer valid, we have to renegotiate. And you reach a point what we call boiling point, and you have to either fight or flee. And Mr. Trump decided to flee and empowering those who are against the program to launch whatever, an attack 3 days before a major summit that was scheduled last Sunday and 2 Sundays ago in Oman, I think, on the 15th. And on the 12th, the Israeli government, empowered by Washington, to launch the attack on June 12th. Did I get there?
No, no.
Okay, thank you. Because I really like to learn from you than me talking. So we are at standstill in the international relation system. It's a fragmented system. International law no longer is valid, as we say in political science. Might makes right. You have power, then you will determine what happens next. You win the war, you determine what happens next. But we have a history in the United States since really, 1898, Spanish-American War. We left things hanging, not completing, not closing the gaps in international relations. The United States kind of, comes in, conquers, and leaves. And this is the problem the United States foreign policy faces. It's crucial that we have to refocus that a little bit. You destroy Germany, you leave it alone, unless someone says, oh, you could actually make money from Germany and Japan. Let's rebuild them with the Marshall Plan. And I don't know if you guys know George C. Marshall, one of my favorite heroes from the Second World War. George C. Marshall is the only person in the Truman cabinet who refused to commit to the idea for an independent Israeli state. Because he said, very famously, we are, as Americans, committed to defending Israel. Because you gotta displace, 2 or 3 million people to replace them with 2 or 3 million people. That's gonna be chaotic, and that will be the end of the American hegemony or control of the region. So this is George C. Marshall. There's a big statue of him in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up, if you guys wanna know. So he kind of foresaw that if you have a client state, that client state will take you in as a quicksand. He's mentioned the word quicksand, and it will suck you in. And this is what we have to do. We have to keep bailing countries out, and the United States policy suffers in the long run. Thank you. I like questions.
Jazakallah khair. So, inshallah, with this background, let's pick it up from here. In the middle of last century, the traditional old colonial systems were coming to an end. And the US, no doubt, have played a major role in ending the colonial rule in the countries, especially the Muslim countries, the Middle East and beyond. But while this old colonial systems were fading, a new colonial settler system was implanted in the heart of the Muslim world. If you look at the Muslim world, it's just like, You will see this extension of countries from Mauritania, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Sudan, Egypt, and then there is this turn toward the north, where you will see another segment: Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Pakistan, and beyond. So implanting this Israel, this Zionist entity in Palestine, was a strategic move by the British at the time. In fact, I remember when I came to this country reading the Encyclopedia Americana, it says that Israel was established for a strategic reason. Strategic reason. And definitely being in the heart of the Muslim world is not a coincidence, because at the time, if you read Gebb book about whether in here, I mean in which direction, he says that we are already granted that we have the leadership in the Muslim world on our side, secular. He said what remains is to secularize the population, the normal person, the common man, me and you. And if we are, being successful. So there was this thing that one day, those Muslims can rise and have an entity of their own. So part of the plans to avoid such thing is implanting this foreign body in the heart of the Muslim world. Because the thinking was, the countries that are there, one day we cannot rely on them. Of course, it turned out that they can rely on them more than can they rely on the Zionists. Because the Muslim countries, unfortunately, in the Middle East especially, the Arab countries, have given up on anything other than to stay in power. From that point of implanting this Zionist entity until today, in addition to what Brother Khudr mentioned, that the U.S. policy of just hit and beat and do this, the Israelis went from a stage of looking for a place for themselves and bringing the Jews from different parts of the world to try to dominate the area. And through this time, you will see them involving in wars that sometimes they have no business in it. Take the 1956 war, when France and Britain wanted to invade Egypt. A war intended against Egypt. Suddenly, the Israelis are fighting with the French and the British against Egypt in this regard. From that point on, you can see from the war of 1967 to the 1970 to the war of 1973. From that point, the civil war in Lebanon, take it a step further to the invasion of reaching to Beirut in that regard, and the massacres that took place, Sabra and Shatila and beyond. And then comes the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the US, just got Russia to come as if it's co-sponsor, but it was obvious the US was running the show of having this peace conference, bringing the Palestinians, the Jordanians, the Syrians, and everybody, and the Israelis at the time to Spain. And of course, the Israelis do not want peace. I mean, this should be obvious from, days back. The question is taking it a step by step to dominate. And this is exactly at the heart of the issue of Iran. At the heart of the issue of Iran, as I'll explain. So from that point on, James Baker came very clearly at the time in 1991 and told the Israelis, look, you keep saying we need the West Bank. We need the land to protect ourselves. He said it will not be long before missiles will make the land irrelevant. That was Secretary of State James Baker telling the Israelis, make peace and give something to the people of Palestine. Make peace with the neighbors, because what you are saying that we need the land to protect ourselves, this land one day will become irrelevant because there will be missiles that will hit you, regardless of what is the distance. And of course, I mean, he was right. That this thing, he could see exactly what is happening right now in Tel Aviv and Haifa and Netanya and beyond. But the recent events, as we see it, first of all, we cannot isolate what's happening now from the events in Gaza. As you know, on October 7, 2 years ago, there was this Tufan al-Aqsa, which shook the foundation of the Zionist entity at the time, where basically, few thousand people, headed by a few hundred well-trained people, got into the territory that the Israelis control and basically took over 21 military points and some of those military bases and some of those settlements, which we discussed in details here. And immediately, the Israelis accused Iran. Oh, Iran is behind it. The planning was done in Iran. The Iran is this and this and that. Although both sides, Hamas and Iran, said this is a purely decision that was made in Gaza and nobody was aware of it, neither in Lebanon nor in Tehran. But still, this thing kept repeating itself that Iran, 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 Iran. Now, if you go a little back, in time, during the Shah of Iran, there was a strategic alliance between Iran and Israel at the time of Shah Iran. And in fact, the relationship was very, very close. And there were many Jews in Iran and many Baha'is in Iran. In fact, the Shah have also the same thinking of trying to dominate the Middle East. For example, he started a nuclear program. And Germany built 2 nuclear programs in Iran. But when the revolution, the Iranian revolution happened in 1979, Germany took their experts and their expertise and left the country, so the 2 nuclear reactors were never completed until the US commissioned a Council of Foreign Relations group headed by Zbigniew Brzezinski to study Iran and the nuclear aspect or option. And this document that came from the Council of Foreign Relations advising the US government that we should give Iran space to have a peaceful nuclear program. Because Iran did sign the agreement on the stopping of the proliferation of nuclear weapons, although Israel did not sign it. Iran signed that they would not aim at having a nuclear weapon program. As a result, Iran paid Russia to complete the nuclear reactor in Bushehr. So there is a big nuclear plant that is operating in Bushehr, still operating in this regard. And some of you have seen Russia giving warnings to the Israelis, don't bomb Bushehr, because many Russian experts are in that nuclear plant working. And 2 days ago, the Russians withdrew those staff. So the Russian staff is no longer in Bushehr. Now, Bushehr was not bombed, although 3 days ago, the spokesman for the army said that Bushehr is bombed. The Israelis came immediately, I said, corrected, said this was false. This was a mistake. That was not the case. Because if Bushehr was bombed, you're going to have a nuclear disaster in the area. The United Arab Emirates is only 14 miles from Bushehr. And if Bushehr is bombed and the radiation start going, the whole water of the Gulf will be contaminated. I mean, as the Prime Minister of Qatar said, we do not have rivers, we do not have lakes. All what they do is desalination. They basically take the water from the Gulf and the ocean and make it desalination process so that they can drink from it and they can use it for whatever use. So, first of all, there was a misunderstanding among many that the US bombed nuclear reactors. The US did not bomb nuclear reactors. What the US bombed are nuclear facilities that are used to enrich uranium. Nuclear facilities that are used to enrich uranium. The Israelis have tried to bomb some of them, but they kept saying that there's this big place in the mountain, this Fordo thing, that they do not have the capabilities. And it's only the US government have in the world those 30,000 plus bomb. I mean, imagine one bomb is 30,000 pounds plus, that it can penetrate the depth of this mountain. What's in there is machines that cause centrifuge that enrich uranium. And the Iranians shocked the world, as Dr. Zarour mentioned, that Trump pulled away from the agreement. When Trump pulled away from the agreement, the Iranians start a marathon toward enrichment. And they shocked the world about 2.5 years ago, saying that we have reached 60% enrichment. And to have a bomb, small size, because you can have a bomb whatever size with 60%, but there's no plane that could carry it. So you have to have more pure. So get to 90%, they said, this will be short time. But notice from, 15, 20 years ago, if you listen to Netanyahu, he kept saying, I mean, I think I saw a statement in 2011 that Iran is within weeks from having a material for stockpile of nuclear weapons. This is 2011. He repeated in 2015 the same and kept repeating, this thing. Now, there's no doubt that Iran have increased its enrichment beyond 60%. There's no doubt about it. But the Israelis have got enrichment way up, and they have their own nuclear weapons for a long time, from the time that France gave them the nuclear reactor in Dimona in the 1960s, and the time that they stole their uranium from the middle of the sea in this regard. So this nuclear issue, is it just a question of a nuclear issue in this regard, or it's a question who's going to dominate the area? When I said that during the Shah of Iran, there were many Jews and Baha'is living in there. Eventually, after the revolution, we have seen Iran executing many Baha'is and Jews because they said they are agents for the Mossad. And this had happened along all this time. And this would explain also the penetration. How in the world, in the first 10 minutes, which we discussed last Sunday, that the Israelis were able to wipe out the top military leadership and the top nuclear scientists within 10 minutes. The top nuclear leadership and the top military leadership were wiped out. How? It just says how deep is the influence of the, Mossad, the Zionist, in Iran. And we have seen over the years killing nuclear scientists. But again, what we need to realize is it's not a question of the Israelis trying to find a place for themselves to live in peace. Because we have seen recently, in conjunction with what's happening in the area, that the Israelis are increasing pressure on the West Bank and planning clearly, according to Smotrich and Ibn Gvir, to annex the West Bank to Israel and basically cancel the so-called Palestinian Authority. So the aim, again, when we say that, what is it that the Israeli objective in this regard? Is it destroying the Iranian nuclear program? Well, it's much more than this in this regard. Because one of their main commentator 3 days ago, what did he say? He said, now Iran, next is Ankara. So he's saying, now we are Iran, our next objective is Turkey. And of course, there was an uproar in Turkey about this. Now you say, okay, what's the role of the other countries in the area? We have all this oil money. We have all those countries. Well, unfortunately, there's no weight. Absolutely was positively zero weight of the Arab countries on what's going on. Zero. In fact, in some perspective, it's negative. We have heard Pakistan today condemning the attack. Did you hear Arab country condemning the attack? They put this mild statements that we need to reach, to a peace and we need to reach to an agreement and this and that, but not even condemning the attack in this regard. On the contrary, I would think some of them, have applauded and supported, this action. So add to all of this, this arrogance that became a prominent feature of the Israeli politicians, which the Quran alluded to. وَلَا تَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. This desire for dominance and arrogance. What comes to this, and what happened with the Abrahamic Accord, is that, oh, they saw now, okay, we have 6, 7 Arab countries that totally, we have peace. Some of them war and peace, some of them not war and peace. So basically, what issues do we still have? We have problems in Yemen. We have problems in Gaza and West Bank. We have issue in Lebanon. And we have issue with down the road with Syria. You see, Syria now is not a country. They don't have even a structure. But the Israelis have been bombing Syria in the last few months on a regular basis. He comes and said, what's the threat from Syria? Not now. 5 years down the road, we will have a threat coming from Syria. 10 years down the road, we have a threat from Syria. So basically, this mentality of we want to be sure that we will not have any potential threat in this regard. And if every country will act like this, then everybody will be fighting with everybody. That, oh, down the road, Southern Sudan will threat Northern Sudan. Let's have a fight. Down the road, between Algeria and Morocco, we'll have issues. Let's have, that's how not, countries and policies and areas and powers deal with each other. And when there was a hint that Turkey might put some forces in Syria, the leadership of the Zionists went berserk, to the point that some of you have seen Trump calling Netanyahu to Washington and saying publicly in front of the whole world, Erdogan is my friend. I like him and he like me. You need to solve your problems with Erdogan in peaceful means, and I can help. Why? Because the US is withdrawing its forces from Syria and entrusting Turkey to take care of it, which really driving those Zionists crazy. So you could see, in summary, that the Zionists are bombing Yemen, Lebanon, the West Bank, Gaza, Syria, Iran, and who else? How could, an area like the Middle East with this mentality of total control of our surrounding, how could the Middle East not have problems and keep changing? And what is really interesting is that you cannot catch your breath, because they will start an operation and suddenly they are hitting at Syria, and the third thing they are carrying it with Yemen, and the fourth thing that they are carrying it with Iran, and this goes from one situation to one situation to another situation. This is an exact sample of how they dealt with the issue of the Palestine. They will make an agreement and break it. Make an agreement and break it, which the Quran have talked about. كُلَّمَا عَهَدُوا عَهْدًا نَبَذَهُ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ. Whenever they make an agreement, some of them will break it. And that's why with this Palestinian issue, Yasser Arafat almost gave up everything. He signed on a white paper. All what he got from the Israelis, we will recognize you as representing the Palestinian people. And what did they get? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Imagine last month, the president of Abbas was supposed to receive a wafd group from the Arab countries. The Israelis said, we will not allow you in, headed by the Saudi foreign minister. We will not allow you in this regard. So what do you call this other than basically we will dominate the area? We will not allow any entity in the area to the point that it could threaten us. And from this perspective came the bombing of the Iran, as Dr. Zarour mentioned. Now what happened with Trump is that he was in Canada, and there was a discussion of 3 statements. One about Ukraine, one about the tariffs, and one about Iran and Israel. When it comes to the 3 agreements, Trump refused to sign any of them initially. He said he is not willing. They told him, you know, this Iran, this Russia and Ukraine thing. And Trump said, no, no, you guys hurt the feeling of Putin. I mean, this was in public. The president of the United States is telling the European countries and Japan, you hurt the feeling of Putin. After all what Putin have done in Ukraine, you hurt his feeling. So he refused to sign that agreement. Then came the issue of tariffs. He said, I will not discuss it, you know, within the group. We'll discuss country by country. He refused to sign it. When it comes to the statements on Iran and Israel, also he said, I'm not going to sign it. In the last minute, his advisors said, no, at least, you know, this one sign it. So reluctant, he signed it. But when he signed it, he want to create this drama. So he said, I am leaving Canada. The conference is not finished. I'm leaving Canada. There's something big. That's the way that he put it. And I asked all the people of Tehran to evacuate. 9 or 10 million people from Iran supposed to leave town. Okay, what sort of ideas start going around the world? Is he going to throw a nuclear bomb on Tehran? Is the Israelis going to throw a nuclear bomb on Tehran? I mean, when you say 10 million people leave the city, and he came and said, we're going to have a conference with the national security. The Netanyahu channel in Israel made this statement that the decision already made, Trump going to bomb, you know, and enter the war and so on and so forth. So basically things became, within about, you know, 10 hours, total uncertainty. And suddenly nothing happened. In the morning, you will hear something. In the afternoon, you hear another thing. All of them tweets at one point saying, yes, no, we will do, we will not do. So the thing we're in limbo. At the same time, you know, Iran starts bombing Israel in very effective ways. However, all those, you know, bombing do not account for 15% of the damage that happened to Iran on the first night. There's no doubt about it. But for the first, you know, time ever, we see the situation and the streets in Tel Aviv and Haifa and Netanya and in the south. You see some of these pictures and say, are those pictures from Gaza? Because subhanAllah, the week before they started the Israelis this attack, there was a poll. They asked the Israeli people about the situation in Gaza, and the Israeli people, the majority said, we do not want to see any pictures from Gaza. We do not want to see any pictures from Gaza. I mean, they know that what's being done to the people of Gaza, and they are running after food and being killed every day, almost 100, trying to get some food, and they said they do not want to see the pictures. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the pictures, send it to Tel Aviv. I mean, you have seen in the Israeli media where somebody says, a soldier coming back, he said, when I saw the damage, I thought this is areas of Gaza, this area of Gaza. So there's no doubt, because why I do emphasize this, and because some people come and say, Iran is not doing anything. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم. لا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم. Give the people some due. I mean, they have done what no other countries, I mean, there are some of those countries that surround the Zionist entity, spend tens of billions, hundreds of billions on weapons that really rust in the storage and done nothing in this regard. Now, suddenly, we have the White House issuing a statement. And this is to really, it looks now to confuse and prepare for something that's now clear. Saying basically, we're going to have 2 weeks. We will see after 2 weeks, we'll decide. And the Israelis, of course, were, what? 2 weeks, we're going to keep dealing with those missiles coming every night in this regard. But within a few days, the president came last night in Washington time and Iran time, it's Sunday morning, say basically the American Air Force have bombed 3 places in Iran. The one that needed those big bombs, basically the Fordo place, which is under the mountains, it says that they used 6 of those bombs in Tehran. Now, in that Fordo base, I'm sorry. Now, what is the extent of the damage? Of course, we have seen the president that total operation, it's finished, it's done. Secretary of Defense saying the same thing, although we have seen the IAEA, we have seen a statement from American journalists, and we have statement even from the Israelis that yes, the damage is real, but they were not out of business in this regard. What's also interesting is that the Iranians say that we have already evacuated our staff and the enriched material from those places. And the Israelis are sounding the alarm today on this. As we promised, we're going to give more time for that. So let me close with this of where this thing is heading. Of course, difficult to predict that, but we have seen statements today from Netanyahu saying basically, we will not go for a war of attrition, harb istinzaf. Because according to the Wall Street Journal, each day is costing the Israelis hundreds of millions of dollars. Because Iran sent this, drones that cost a few $100s. They have sold thousands of them to Russia. Turkey sold thousands to Ukraine, and they are fighting with Ukraine and Russia fighting with Iranian and Turkish drones. And of course, you ask, where's the drones of the Arab countries? They are busy with the camel races and busy of having those American artists having those parties. But that's another issue, unfortunate in this regard. So when Iran sent this drone that's worth a few $100s, the Israelis sent 2 or 3 missiles to try to intercept it, and each one is cost $1 million. So the Wall Street Journal is saying the cost each day for the Israeli government is hundreds of millions of dollars. For how long they can maintain this? Of course, not for long. And this statement by Netanyahu today that we will not extend the war beyond what it needed. And in fact, he mentioned something, but again, he's a big liar, so we know. So he said the war with Iran and in Gaza would, in a certain sense, need to come to a conclusion. That's not the exact statement, but it's along the same line. Now, is he sincere in this? With Iran, I think so. With Gaza, I don't think so, unless he's a pressure to do so. Why he's saying this? Because last night, demonstration came back to the Israeli streets against the war in Gaza and for the release of the hostages. So you could see the headlines in the Israeli media. Overwhelming Israelis support the war on Iran, and the overwhelming majority of the Israelis want the war in Gaza to stop. So most likely he's making these statements to just satisfy those people. So until and unless Washington would come with this hectic policy here and there and come and say, we need to stop both wars, there is a possibility in this regard. Will Iran retaliate against the American interest? I don't think so. I don't think so. They will keep hitting at Israel. However, there is a possibility that they will do something to save face. What happened when American killed General Soleimani? You remember? There was a plan to kill General Soleimani, American-Israeli plan. This is what Trump said in his first term. There was a plan to kill General Soleimani. He said in the last minute, Netanyahu said, I'm not participating. He said, we did it by ourselves. What happened? There were a few missiles that reached the Qa'ida in Ain al-Asad in Iraq. There's an American base in Iraq called Ain al-Asad. So they did send some missiles there. But according to Trump, before the Iran sent the missiles, they told the Americans, we're going to send a few missiles to Ain al-Asad. Meaning, take your troops and hide them. Because they had to do something by killing Soleimani. I mean, this is Trump, if you want to believe him. And indeed, what had happened is very limited damage. So there may be some missiles that will come from those groups that support Iran into American bases in Iraq. In the Gulf, it will be very, very dangerous. Iraq, they may just let it go. That's a small possibility, but it is a possibility. What Iran until now shows is that we will get back at the Americans by beating and hitting at the Israeli cities, which is basically the Palestinian cities of Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Haifa, Netanya, and the Najaf in the south. For the sake of time, we'll stop. We have about 20 minutes. Jazakum Allahu khair. Wa barakallahu fikum. And we thank Dr. Khudr Zarour. And you can see some of his interviews. I think tomorrow he have like 2 interviews tomorrow on this that he might mention at the end. But this time for a question and answer and comment, inshallah. Abu Ashraf, tfaddal.
I have 2 questions. Small one. One for you, Hisham. Why did Trump pull out of the nuclear agreement that's been signed with Obama? That's for you. Further, do you think, I don't think that Iran is going to retaliate, even using their arm, their hands in Hezbollah and Yemen and all of the other supporters. But do you think if they're going to do it or not?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the questions you had. Well, the United States, Iran will not retaliate directly against the United States. But I think that Iran will definitely retaliate against the Israeli targets. That's the likelihood. I think behind the scenes there are secret meetings and deals between Iran and the US. That's remained to be seen. It's going to be fruitful or not. But I don't know why the Iran nuclear program was a problem. In 1984, it was Saddam's forces that attacked Shiraz, the first program that was developing. And by the way, just so you know, from 1973 to 1979, it was the Israelis helping Iran with the nuclear program. Just so you know, we didn't mention that. And it started in 1957 under the Eisenhower administration, okay? So there are 2 Irans. There is Iran in diaspora, and there is Iran in Iran. The Iran, the revolution, and Iran who are in diaspora. You have 1 million Iranians in Southern California, probably 50 to 80,000 in DC, Virginia, Northern Virginia. They are lobbyists for Iran. They want to return the Shah or his Shah's son. I think he lives in DC, the Shah's son. So they want to replace him. They do want to topple the regime. When does Iran respond? Whenever the regime is threatened, they will respond. So that's why they emphasize several times, we are not going to topple the regime like they did with Iraq, okay? They kept that, off the table because they know the Iranians will not accept the regime to collapse. And they managed that very creatively within media and sound bites and interviews. Both Netanyahu and Trump said, we're not going to replace the regime, but eventually the regime will just disappear because it becomes so weak. But Iran has a lot of clients. Iran has a lot of friends. They could do something to hurt American interests, but not direct attack the United States. It would be counterproductive.
The other question that the brother Abu Ashraf have is why did Trump pulled from the Iran agreement in the first administration? To understand this, we need to have a little background. Whenever an American president comes, Netanyahu would come to Washington and said, we need to bomb Iran. This goes back 30 years ago. This is not new. We need to bomb Iran. We need to bomb Iran. We need to bomb Iran. And every American president will, saying that our interests are basically at this moment not to do it. And the Americans will follow their own interests. And then came the Iranian, agreement with the US, the European, with the Russian and the Chinese, as Dr. Zarour mentioned in this regard. And Obama was ready to sign the agreement and the Congress to approve the agreement. Suddenly, the Republicans brought Netanyahu to Washington, D.C. They were not in charge of the Congress and the Senate, but still, he came and addressed the Congress and the Senate, defying the president. It was clearly defining the president and defining the government and its institution in this regard, and saying that basically Iran is very close to nuclear weapons. Iran will have an arsenal. Iran will have this. Will have this. But still, at the end, it was approved by Congress in this regard, and with a small majority in this regard, and even the Jews in Congress, Jewish representative, had it with Netanyahu, and many of them have, spoke clearly against him because this really threatened their influence in this country, because the U.S. government supposedly supporting Israel regardless if it's Democrat or Republican. Now Netanyahu will come and have good offices with the Republican against the Democrat because he want to push that agenda. And in fact, from that point, really, this has persisted. So the agreement happened despite the Israeli influence, and despite AIPAC, and despite all the influence and the lobbying that the Israelis have done and their supporters in Washington, D.C. And the coming of Trump with some of the Jewish influenced people around his administration, they were able to come with the cause of let's withdraw and renegotiate. Let's withdraw from this agreement and renegotiate. And of course, Iran refused to renegotiate. On the contrary, Iran used the opportunity to, as I said, to have really a marathon of enrichment in this regard. There's also a personal issue. Trump, now you know him better than before. He liked to be seen as someone who really is making the difference, someone who's taking bold decisions, someone who is different than previous ones. Last week, the whole world was talking about Iran and Israel and what's becoming, and he was attacking Biden on tweets. So basically, he hates the guts of Obama, no doubt about it. And you have seen they tried their best to cancel Obamacare. I mean, there is a policy in this regard for the Republicans, no doubt. But another part of it is the legacy of Obama need to be finished. The legacy of Biden need to be finished. So there's a personal, I think there's a policy part of it, but there's also a personal part of it. Oh, I'm going to withdraw. The Europeans, please, Russia, China, let's work with it. I am out of the agreement. Deal with it. I think it's within that both context. Any? تفضل.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I do want to expand a little bit on Hisham's answer, and that is, in presidential terminology, there is something called legacy. If you are leaving the White House, you want to leave a legacy behind. And Mr. Trump wants to build that legacy by attacking Obama's policies. Of course, I'm not a big fan of Obama either, but you want to do the Affordable Act or Obamacare. That's one of the attacks. And I have not heard from President or candidate Trump in 2015, 2016, what his problem was with the nuclear agreement. No one has told me what the problem was. I don't know if you have, I haven't. So there's the issue of legacy. I want to leave a legacy behind. I changed Iran's behavior. And this is counterproductive because a rising China teaming up with Russia becomes a problem for the US. So US now is kind of again, I said muddling through earlier, and that's what what's happening. Now, one thing I want to take you back to May last month, and that is the last 3, 4, 5 years, Netanyahu became super close with the Indian Prime Minister. And both are anti-Muslim, there is no secret about that, right? And they have empowering each other. They have been cheerleading for each other for the last several years. So, Netanyahu encouraged Modi to attack Pakistan. And that was counterproductive. That was childish act, and India paid heavily for it. They lost 5 planes and major embarrassment. At the same time, Israel attacked a month later, on the same day, 30 days later, they attacked Iran. And they are suffering. Israelis are suffering. It's counterproductive. So that alliances that we're building between India and Israel, that's much weaker now. I just want to say that because some of you may be interested in that subject. And that's why Pakistan feels empowered. That's why they are supporting the Iranians, just so you know. Khalid has a question. Thank you. This is the $2 million question. Do you want to answer this first, or should I go?
I can take a shot, and then inshallah you can elaborate. First of all, let's make things clear. What really shocked me from the response of the Muslims in general is that somehow they were expecting Russia and China to come to the help of Iran. That was really way off. And then those who thought that Turkey and Pakistan will come to the help of Iran, again, this is even way off. We have to understand that the countries today act on their own national interest. They are not thinking what you are thinking as an ummah. In fact, when the high-level Iranian official said that Pakistan inform us if Israel attack us with a nuclear weapon, Pakistan will respond. Immediately, the Pakistani issue a statement that our nuclear weapons is for us, for our protection, and nothing more. So basically, we should not expect anyone in this regard to make a stand. Why? Because they have dealt with Trump, and they know when somebody trying to challenge Trump, we have seen the kings and the presidents come to the White House and what he makes out of them. And we have seen anyone who's trying to challenge him, even among the Republicans, he will form a pack to defeat them. So keep this in mind that the countries until now, they are thinking in their national interest, not in the cause of an ummah per se. And inshallah, Dr. Zarou can elaborate.
Okay, thank you for the question again, Brother Khalid. Here's what Muslims need to do, must do. And we fell into a trap back in 1917, 1918, 1920, at the closing of the First World War, and that is fragmentation. We suffer from fragmentation. We as Muslims, especially in the greater Syria, Syria al-Kubra, we need to focus on our identity as Muslims. Borders should not define who we are. We should define where our borders are. It's a major problem. When you go to the circus, you'll see 3,000 pounds elephant. They're tying this elephant with a small rope. It's psychological warfare. They know that the elephant doesn't know that, but you and I know, if the elephant just switches his neck that way, he will tear that rope, right? So they have us trapped into borders and towns and villages, and we just accept that. That's not the outcome. We're Muslims, we're better than that. We have, as Muslims, one real estate, one parcel, one real estate, not multiple real estate, one Muslim ummah. That's it. We have to think that way. Imagine if a Chinese Muslim is defending, I don't know, Egypt, or a Moroccan Muslim is defending Malaysia. We have to have that ummah, sense of ummah. But they have contained us in fragmented societies that we are not linking each other anymore. We have lost that identity. You're Muslim or not Muslim? I'm Muslim, but I am Lebanese. I'm happy to be Lebanese, but we have a greater issues to deal with than fragmentation. And we fell into the trap, and we continue to fall into the trap. Whereas Europe, they have fought for 2,000 years. They fought a religious war for 100 years. A third, or actually almost half, of the European population suffered of religious differences. The shape of the cross is different. So let's go to war. We Muslims don't do that. We're better than that because we knew we had good leadership. Our strength is our numbers, our iman. And we have lost that a little bit. And I'm sorry being so blunt. We need to go back to that. We are Muslims. From where? It doesn't matter. I'm Muslim. And you have to accept that, okay? So when, I go to these demonstrations, I'm not Palestinian, but Palestine is my home. I have the right to go there. I have the right to worship there. I have the right to build there. Not only there. I was, in Dubai in April, and people were not happy with me there because I said, I'm Arab first. I'm not an Emirati. I'm an Arab. I go wherever I want. And they don't like that. Well, they are putting themselves in an awkward position where you have to cave into the West. You got to lose your own countries, your own oil. And you got to go back to 50 years before, which is, anyway, sand dunes. So we have, as an ummah, we have to look at our numbers. Alhamdulillah, we have three things going for us. Number one, major convergence to Islam. We here at the masjid, or in America, we have to capitalize on that. That's critical. We have to bring people to the masjid, bring people to the ummah. Number two, we have a lot of alliances, even with Israelis, who don't like the current state of events. They are, media are reaching out to us. We are beginning to see more fair and balanced reporting in the media. Even, what's his name, Tucker Carlson, Tucker? 180 degrees difference. McKay, what's the other British guy on CNN? Morgan, yeah, Priest Morgan. Again, this is the shift. We need to work on that. So please, please go out. This is your revolutionary call for tonight. Make non-Muslim friends. Please don't go hang out with just Muslims. Bring Muslims to understand our issues. Anyone that I meet and they go to the Middle East, spend the semester, they come back, oh my God, we don't know you guys are so liberal, so cool, I love your food, and work on that. Okay, don't just have friends who are Muslims. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Let me close, inshallah, with this statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talked about the people who are now occupying Palestine historically, He said that they will have influence only in two ways. حبل من الله وحبل من الناس. A robe from Allah, meaning if Allah support them, and they were supported until they came and denied Isa alayhi salam as a prophet. And they lost that status of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being on the haqq, on the truth. And then, if Allah is not of their support, Allah said in the Quran that they only will be something if they get a robe from the people. And they are still getting this robe. That's why last week, when the bombs and the missiles started going to Tel Aviv and Haifa and beyond, what did the Israelis do? They asked France and Britain and the US to help to stop those missiles. Hablan min nas, the robe of the people. And they asked the US to come and be part of the war. This is really just re-emphasize that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is the haqq. One day, this robe of the people will no longer exist because they will get sick and tired of their endeavors and their wars, as the Quran says, كُلَّمَا أَشْعَلُوا نَارًا لِلْحَرْبِ أَطْفَأَهَا اللَّهُ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring the khair, the good to the ummah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Protect us, protect our children, our families, our ummah. Protect Islam and Muslims in this country and beyond. Jazakumullahu khair. And special thanks to Brother Zarour for his coming here on a short notice. Jazakallahu khairan. I'm sorry. كلما أوقدوا نارا not أشعلوا. Sorry.